Good morning, Spartans. Happy Monday, May 16th. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your weekend, and I hope you enjoyed the prom. It looked like you guys had some pretty decent weather for the event. You can see the week ahead. Today, we will continue talking about the influence of groups. We've talked about in and out groups, we've talked about primary groups, secondary groups. Today, we're going to look at how groups influence our behavior. And then you guys will have the rest of the day to finish up the chapter 5 and 6 reading guide, questions 49 through 56, which is due tomorrow. Remember, the reading guide is due tomorrow, so you want to make sure you have that done and turned in on time. It is a 40-point assignment, so you will need to have that in. The rest of the week, tomorrow we'll finish up with formal versus informal groups, and then we'll start our review whilst watching Mean Girls, which will give us a nice little illustration of how we act as more or less pack animals. Mean Girls will take us through Tuesday and Wednesday. Most likely we'll have to finish on Thursday. We'll discuss the review guide that you should have been completing while watching the movie. And then Friday, May 20th will be our Unit 4 exam, current events quiz, and then we will start the next reading on what is it? Deviance and stratification. That'll take us to the end of the year. So we'll finish up groups today and tomorrow, Mean Girls and review the middle part of the week, and then test on Friday. With that, grab whatever it is you're taking notes on. I would also suggest that you open up the note slides that you can find in Schoology. I might as well just show you how to do this. The link should be there for the week. The link takes you to the handouts folder for Unit 4, Chapter 5 and 6. There will be some links that you will need to take to watch a couple of embedded videos. So just have those open. Again, if you need to pause the video to go and watch those clips or write something down, obviously that makes total sense to pause this and go and do that. We've talked about the importance of groups, why humans need groups. Right, our social structure has changed over the course of millennia. We do not have that tight community bond. We're more or less individual members of a larger society, so we try to fill that need for close relationships with the group. When we find ourselves in a group, whether it's a primary group or a secondary group, or it's the in versus out group, it doesn't matter. Once we find ourselves in that group, which we have a biological need to find ourselves in a group, the group dynamic takes over and it starts to influence our behavior. This behavior often comes in either two forms: cooperation or conflict. Cooperation is, and it doesn't matter, it's conflict or cooperation, we're still going towards a goal, right? All of our groups are based on being motivated towards a goal. Cooperation is more of a team-based approach to something, collaborative. Conflict, the goal is still very specific. The goal is to defeat someone else. It is to be victorious. Whether it's cooperation or conflict, the point of both is to achieve an end, achieve a positive end. Cooperation is obviously team-based. Conflict, whatever the goal may be, obviously includes defeating whoever your opponent is. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. And if you think about it, there's conflict on there's conflict on the basketball team, there's conflict on the football team, there's conflict in the one-act play. Who is going to be the starter? There's conflict in your senior class. Who is going to be the valedictorian? Conflict is this driving competition that makes someone rise up to be the best. Conflict can happen in our places of business. Who's going to close the big deal? Who's going to drag in the biggest client? The goal is obviously to make money for the company, but conflict, right, adds another component to that goal, and that is to be the best or to defeat whoever you're up against. Cooperation can be the same thing, to achieve a goal, but as a team. I think last week I talked about the transition from Microsoft Windows being the #1 more or less producer of computers in the 1990s and early 2000s. and they were eventually replaced by Apple or Mac. The late 1990s, early 2000s, Microsoft Windows was in that conflict group behavior. The employees at Microsoft were in competition to come up with the best code, the best product, the best ideas. That eventually led to so much conflict that there was burnout, that some of their best employees left. Not to mention, there was so much conflict between people trying to be the best, I don't even want to call them engineer, that they really missed out on an opportunity to improve their ideas, make their ideas better, because they weren't willing to share what they had with somebody else. There was a bunch of half-baked ideas. While at Apple, during the same time period, everyone was working together in a very collaborative model. It allowed them to, more or less assert a technological dominance over this country the next following, 2 decades. While we have cooperation and conflict, those are the two big things. There's some smaller behaviors that come up in the group dynamic. Social exchange. You guys may see this a lot with your siblings. If you do this, then I'll do that. If you wash the dishes, I'll take out the trash. If you have responsibilities on your team, I'll bring in the equipment if you rake the batter's boxes. I mean, it's I'll do this if you do that. It's more or less trying to divide and conquer the task. Everyone gets something out of it. This happens a lot. This happens a lot in group dynamics. I would argue that the exchange, the social exchange, often happens in cooperation. Now, that doesn't preclude it from happening in conflict. I mean, it certainly can. But this concept of social exchange is everyone is getting something out of the agreement, which is the exact opposite of coercion. Coercion is more or less you are asserting your will, your dominance over someone. The person who is being oppressed or who is being dominated isn't getting anything out of the relationship, other than them not having to deal with you for the moment. But again, whenever we go into a group, our group dynamic is going to be controlled by the group. It can be cooperative, it can be based on conflict, it can be an exchange of who's doing what, or it can just be coercion. You're going to do it and you're going to like it. A couple more things to talk about when it comes to group behavior and the group dynamic. The influence of peer pressure and subscribing to the group ideology, group behavior, group belief system is pretty impressive. In the 1950s and 1960s were kind of a revolutionary time for the study of sociology and psychology. There was a lot of psychedelic drugs that were being studied after World War II, when social scientists discovered chemicals that were being produced by the CIA, FBI, MI6, any of the intelligence communities, more or less to kind of deal with sabotage and spies. But the study or these discoveries rather, allowed social scientists to really study the dynamics of why people do what they do. And unfortunately, some of this study came from tragedies like the Holocaust, because of the Nuremberg trials of the 1940s. One of the major defenses from the Germans were, you can't punish me for participating in the Holocaust and the genocide of 6 million Jews because I was just following orders. And the prosecution, obviously didn't buy that defense, saying, you have a conscience, you are your own person. Following orders is not a defense. But back to the point, sociologists, psychologists wanted to see just how influential is peer pressure. So scientists such as Solomon Asch and Stanley Milgram kind of broke this down. Here is where you'd want to pause this video, and go and watch the Solomon Asch video clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'll kind of explain what's going on, and then you guys can watch it. So this particular clip does a couple of things. I'm going to turn the video off here. The first experiment that Solomon Asch is going to conduct is with a group. Obviously, you're going to find out one person is the test and the rest is all in on it. But they're going to talk about which lines are longer or which lines are the same length. And part of the group is going to deliberately answer it wrong, while the test is like, what the hell is going on? But as you watch the video, watch how he changes his mind. And again, this gets down to, if you're a part of the group, and in this particular case, this isn't a primary group. This isn't even a social group. I mean, these people are just in the same place at the same time, right? They're in the aggregate. They're an aggregate group, and they still subscribe to the group theory or the group belief. The next experiment is the elevator. The test subject, the person who is not in on the experiment, more or less will go with what the group does. So pause the lecture video, get into the notes, open up the link, and then watch that and come back. All right, the next one, a little bit more unnerving. This one is by Stanley Milgram, and this little introduction here talks about the opening to the 1960s, but it talks very much about the obedience, how people, and they more or less succumb to authority. So that's Stanley Milgram right there, more or less. Two people were in a room. One was the test. One was, part of the experiment. The person who was supposedly being shocked was in on the test, while the person who was reading the questions and subjecting people to the shocks was a test subject. They were the ones they were the ones being studied, trying to figure out just what people will do when they are told to do so by an authoritative figure. The level at which some of these people follow directions and demands is quite eye-opening. Go ahead, pause the lecture video and watch that. All right, and the last one, the bystander effect. You're going to see here people just blatantly, willfully ignoring someone who is clearly in pain, clearly distraught, clearly in need of help. And again, it gets at what we're talking about when we're a part of a group. And again, these are just people on the street, and we still feel that we're part of some sort of group. Imagine just how influential. This is where I want to stress this out to you. And the three examples that I've shown you, these are just people who have recently come into existence with one another. Imagine how powerful peer pressure is, how powerful groupthink is, how powerful the bystander effect is, or obedience is when you're in a group that you've been together with for a long time, or where there is an emotional connection, or where there is a goal in mind. Pretty significant. Let's pause this video and then watch that. All right, just to recap here before I send you guys off to finish up the chapter 5 and 6 reading it. Excuse me, that was world history. This unit so far, we have covered why groups are important to us. Groups are important to us because they give us that social emotional piece that we no longer have due to a very rigid division of labor that puts us in very specific statuses, very specific parts of the social structure, and denies us that emotional piece. Once we're in that group, whether primary or secondary, there's going to be some dynamics that control the behavior of the interaction of the group. It's either going to be cooperative or in conflict. Whether it's cooperative or conflict, there is still a goal to be achieved. The conflict one, though, is going to achieve the goal. It's going to achieve the desired outcome, along with person A defeating person B. Oftentimes, conflict or cooperation is going to come with some other smaller behaviors. One is either going to be social exchange. I do something for you, you do something for me, or coercion. You're going to do something for me because I have power over you. Regardless if it is a conflict type dynamic or a cooperation type dynamic, everyone in the group will conform. They will subscribe to the beliefs, they will subscribe to the behaviors, and they will go along with what everyone else is doing. And oftentimes they won't even think about it. I mean, think about this. How many times have you tucked your sweatpants into your socks? How many times you get on the bus when you rode the bus to school, when you get on the bus and you walked all the way to the back of the bus to sit down? Think about how you move around the hallways. No one's really told you that. You just do it. Think about how you move around the lunchroom. We just do things because we see other people do it, and that's the learned behavior. It's part of socialization. But as we get into a more close-knit group setting, those beliefs can be heightened significantly, and sometimes that can lead to great things being done. Oftentimes that can lead to really bad things being done. I'm done covering information with you guys today. You have the rest of the reading guide to finish for tomorrow. Remember, that is due tomorrow, and that is a 40-point assignment, so we don't want to sissy-foot around with that. So get that done and get it turned in. I'll be in the building tomorrow. We can review, kind of get ourselves squared away, and then we'll start watching the video and review. Remember, your test is Friday, and then the week after we will start our last chapter of the year and your high school career. So hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, go Spartans.